Read a book in 3 minutes today. We are reading The Moon and Sixpence, a novel published in 1919 and one of W. Somerset Maugham's classic works. From this book emerges an eternal question. When idealism conflicts with reality, how should we choose? The protagonist, Charles Strickland, becomes almost an embodiment of idealism itself. At the age of 40, Charles has a respectable job, a loving wife, and two beautiful, well-behaved children. To the outside world, he appears to be living a perfect life. Yet, beneath this seemingly orderly happiness lies a storm of emotions and unspoken desires. No one could have anticipated that one night, Charles would abandon everything: his family, his comfortable life, and head to Paris to pursue his dream of painting. He leaves behind nothing but a brief letter with fewer than 10 lines, offering no apology or explanation. His wife is devastated, and the family falls into financial ruin as a result of his departure. Charles, however, lives in Paris in extreme poverty, yet he seems to relish it. Once a well-groomed man, he now lives in squalor, but with a sense of freedom. He is indifferent to the questions and criticisms from friends, the struggles of his wife and children, and his own financial hardship. He simply repeats, "I must paint, like a drowning man who struggles to stay alive. I must keep painting." Very few believe in Charles' cause, except for a fellow painter named Dirk Stroeve, who praises Charles as a once-in-a-century genius. Dirk helps and supports him unconditionally. Later, when Charles falls gravely ill, Dirk, despite his beloved wife's objections, brings Charles into his home to care for him. Unexpectedly, Dirk's wife falls hopelessly in love with Charles and decides to leave her husband to follow Charles into his poverty-stricken life. However, she is soon abandoned by Charles and ultimately commits suicide. For Charles, all of this is irrelevant. He states, "I don't need love. I have no time for romance. But I cannot conquer my desires. I hate them, for they imprison my spirit. I want to be rid of all desires, and then I can fully devote myself to my art." Charles continues to live in poverty, wandering and creating art. He eventually finds himself on the island of Tahiti, where he marries a local woman named Ada. They live in a paradise-like place, a vibrant, colorful world that seems like Eden. This becomes Charles' final resting place. Charles eventually dies from leprosy, but not before completing a massive mural that encapsulates his life's artistic vision. It is a work of profound beauty and terror, a piece that could only have been created by an artist who has delved deep into the human soul. Even more shocking, Charles had been blind for a year before his death, possibly seeing more in that blindness than he ever did in his life. After his death, his works are valued at enormous sums, and the world finally recognizes his genius. Even his first wife hangs replicas of his paintings in her home. Yet, in Charles' heart, he never sought anyone's approval. In the end, Ada fulfills his last wish and burns the house that holds his greatest work. For Charles, his life was complete. He created a world, saw its beauty, and then, with both pride and disdain, destroyed it. This novel is filled with poignant phrases, and Maugham masterfully explores the complexities of human nature. Each character in the book possesses a mix of either complex or distorted traits. Charles abandons his wife and children, betrays friends, and mercilessly mocks and harms others. He sees money as worthless, fame as fleeting, and compromise as unnecessary. Yet, undeniably, he is a genius, a man driven by an ideal, a puppet of his desires, and a lifelong pilgrim. As Bertrand Russell once said, "Vileness and nobility, cruelty and kindness, hatred and affection can coexist within the same soul." As Bertrand Russell also pointed out, all great works have chapters that are unpleasant, and The Moon and Sixpence is no exception. Charles' pursuit of his ideals goes against the values of society, and thus he is rejected. but his artistic works align with popular tastes. And so he is praised. As they say, 1,000 readers see 1,000 Hamlets. Some see Charles as a man who chooses his ideals, no matter the cost. Others see a dreamer who gazes at the moon while the world is full of sixpence. Some respect the cost of pursuing one's ideals, while others find peace and contentment. So, for those of you who have read this book, what do you see? I'll end with this quote. Success has only one form: living life in your own way.